Hey folks, Cool18 here, and welcome to another episode of our Unity 3D tutorial. So when we last left things off, we've got shooting in there and the ability to kill each other, but there's kind of a funny thing that goes on right now in that when you die, well, that's it, and everything just goes blank. So let's go ahead and do a quick demo of what that looks like. We'll start the client over here. We'll start another one over here. We'll set up the multiplayer server. So if I start here and just turn around and then connect on my other console over here in multiplayer, there we are. So if I run up to my other character and I shoot, guns do 25 damage, takes 4 shots to kill. That's great, but now you can see over here everything is blank. I'm still connected to the server, but the problem is that my player is dead, and that took my camera with it. So there's no respawning, and certainly there's not much in the way of good death behavior. So I think that we're really going to want to tackle that problem next, because I think that's, yeah, that'll be a pretty important one to set up. So one of the things I'm going to do as well is I'm going to, in our invisible map stuff over here, we've got one spawn spot, and it was quite nice for consistency to just have the one, but we could mix it up over here by putting another spawn spot, and I will put this one right inside the doorway over there. So there we go. So now we've got 2 places where our characters can spawn from. Here's one of the things that we could do as well, is we could attach a some sort of gizmo to make these more visible. There's a few different ways you can do it. Actually, one of the easiest ways to do it is to select an icon from here. You see this? First of all, you can set up nameplates so that they're visible that way. And what's very cool is they stay visible. Here, let's go ahead and take both of them. Really? Can you not do them in bulk? Interesting. But now that we've done that, now the spawn spots will always stay visible in our editor. That's one possible way of doing it. What other symbol might be good? Maybe just a little diamond. Oh yeah, but that will literally, since our spawn spots are lying to the ground, that doesn't show up exactly the way that we want. You know what? We'll go with the red thing there. So it'll be very visible exactly where our spawn spots are. Okay, so now when we connect up to the server, it'll randomly pick one of the 2 because that's the code that we have set up. So we spawn there. Let's try again. Single player. Let's try one more time. Should have put in more just to increase the odds. Pretty sure this should be working. Let's go ahead and add some more then, just to mix it up. Here, we'll have one go up here, and another spawn spot right at the peak, which actually, I just realized, will need to be brought up so that we don't start off in the ground. Something kind of like that. Okay, this should work. Single player. There we go. Yeah, we started at one that's a little higher up the hill this time. Okay, so our random spawning is indeed working. One of the things I think I'm going to do is move this camera. I'm not 100% happy with where it is. Where are we looking? In resources, our player controller. We'll just drop this into the scene and zoom in on our character. And if we take our character's camera, we're going to move it a little bit. There's a lot of different ways that we might want to go and adjust how it sort of like renders the player model so it still shows the arm but nothing else. But anyway, I'm going to move the camera so it's right in front of our eyes. And we're going to go ahead and apply these changes. And if I do this and we respawn again, there shouldn't be as much of a problem. Yeah, if I look down, I'm not sort of clipping inside my model anymore. We're going to call that good enough for this. I think it's possible now that the camera is so far forward. Okay, no, we don't poke through the walls. Oh, no, we do there. I was going to say, pretty sure that might be an issue. Camera's just far enough forward that it can poke through the wall, and I'm going to take a very quick fix for that, which is in my player controller over here. In the character controller component of that, I'm going to increase our radius to something like a full half-meter radius. So if we do this one more time, we should just bump into the wall and no longer, yeah. So now we're bumping into the wall just far enough so that it's hopefully not a problem. So again, there's a few different ways that we could potentially, you know, deal with this and improve it later on. But that's going to be okay. Like what I'm talking about is on our local model. So we've got our player controller there. Right now we can see all of ourselves. What we could do is have a different version of the soldier that we use for ourselves, which is just like the arm. Everything else is like turned off and invisible. And I know the animations are still bad. It still hovers just a little bit and the feet move oddly, and that's because of the arm thing. But again, the free animations that we're using are pretty cheap. Okay, so we've got that. Great. Now, how do we respawn? Well, let's back up the question. How do we spawn in the first place? And that is handled by our network manager. So let's go ahead and take a look at that script. Open this bad boy up. So, oh, and I'll try to remember to increase the size of the font to make it a little easier to follow. So, when we connect to the server, right, we've got buttons to connect. It'll join lobby. After joining the lobby, it will join a room, and then it calls something called spawn my player. Okay? It makes sure we've got spawn spots. It will grab one of our spawn spots at random, and it will then spawn us in that location right over here. Okay, and then it will set up some components. So with that in mind, let's keep that open, and let's go back over to Unity. How do we die? Well, dying involves running the health script. The health script is responsible for keeping track of all of our hit points. And then when our hit points go below 0, we call the die function, which will simply destroy our game object. Now, this works for a lot of things, but not so much for the player, right? If we've got crates or AI-controlled monsters, this might be totally fine, although just destroying it outright might not be ideal either. Really what we'd want to do is replace our character with a death animation. Oh, now that's an interesting thing to consider. What does that mean? And how does that tie into our respawn system? So respawning, really what it means is... instead of, well, there's a few different ways of doing it. Instead of destroying our object, what we could just do is move our player object to a new location, set his health back to 100%, and, maybe reset his weapons. Okay, that's one possibility. So you can do it that way, where you actually move it back to some other spot. Or you can let it be destroyed and simply do something like, you remember we've got a standby camera, right? Before we connect to the server, we've got a camera here. It's right over here. Once we connect to the server, that camera becomes disabled, and we use this one instead. Well, when we die, what we can do is simply re-enable the standby camera so that once again you get this view here, when you can still see other people shooting at each other. And then maybe after 5 seconds of a death timer, then it will just run spawn player again. And that would work perfectly fine. And maybe we'll do that for our first sort of naive implementation of this. So if we die, we're going to just continue to destroy the game object. We're not going to, we're not have a death animation right now. We're not going to have a rag doll or anything like that. We will go ahead and destroy it. But we want to know is if this is an actual player character, then we need to initiate the respawn behavior. So let's go back to our player controller over here. What do we have with this? How can health tell that the thing that just died is a player and not just like an object, like a crate? How can we tell the difference? Well, that's a good question. So this take damage right now gets run on everyone's local computer. So when anyone gets shot ever, actually, let's make sure that's entirely true. Let's follow the flow. So there is a script called player shooting. This is what shoots the gun. So this is a player. This is like, I am running this script on my personal computer right now. This fire routine gets fired when I personally have clicked the button on my screen. So this makes sure we've got a weapon, makes sure our cooldown is good, and then it'll fire the weapon. It'll shoot a ray forward. It'll figure out what we hit. If the thing we hit has health, or its parent does, or whatever like that, then we are going to do some damage. So at this point, it's got health, it's a networked object, so we are going to tell everything on the server that the object that we just shot has taken some damage. Okay? So everyone on the server, so if there's 12 people on the server, all 12 of them will be told that player Quill18 just took damage, and then it will process this, and then each one of them locally will run this script, the die script. Now, what's interesting is this first bit of code only runs if the object being destroyed is not managed by the network. The example of that were like crates, walls, doors, and so on. They're sort of responsible for destroying themselves. But if it does have a network, if it's an instanced object on the network, so something like a player, then only the master client initiates the destroy behavior. And that is a totally good way of doing it. The other way you could do it is check to make sure that it's owned by me. So, owned by ourselves. So right now, the master client is responsible for actually destroying the game objects, but you might want to flip this around, and it's basically the exact same thing. Get component photon view dot is mine. So this way, only the owner of the object destroys the game object. And that actually might be a slightly better way of doing it. In effect, it should be, the overall effect should be the same. For neutral objects, like scene objects, they're all owned by the master client. And then for players, they're responsible for calling this itself. But it still will destroy it everywhere on the network. But by switching to isMine, there's an interesting behavior. If the photon view is mine, then sure, we'll destroy it. But before we destroy it, if this is my actual player object, then initiate the respawn process. And again, we could do this as part of the master client as well. That's, who initiates the respawn? Is it the client? Is it the player? I mean, in a proper sort of client-server architecture for like maximum no cheating whatsoever, you might want to do it in such a way that it's some sort of server process that's running it. But here I think it's okay that it's the player himself or herself that reinitiates the respawn. So we want to know if this thing that's got health, if this object that's currently dying, if it's in my actual player object, if it's something that's supposed to respawn. Actually, that's an interesting question. So what I was going to do, and what I will probably do, is in our player controller here, right now we have it untagged, but we should probably just tag it as a player. Because then over here, I can check if our current GameObject.tag is equal to player. Well, there we go. That'll tell us that we're supposed to respawn. But there could be other things in the game that are supposed to respawn. So what's this respawn tag for? Is that what I just have my spawn spots tagged at? No, I don't have them tagged as anything. That's weird. I'm trying to remember if I started this at some point a couple of months ago and got halfway through something. I'm not sure. We're going to ignore that respawn tag that's in here, and we'll just do that. But there is that interesting question of things that are not players may still, maybe should still respawn. But this is a specific thing for the player itself. We'll deal with the rest of it later on. So if this is us and it's an actual player object, if it's ourselves that's about to be destroyed, which means we're about to lose our camera, then here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the standby camera object. Again, this is, we're going to sort of hard code some things in, which we may or may not want to do later on, but we're going to call it okay now. GameObject.find, find the thing called standby camera. And then we are going to set active to true. We're going to make this camera active once again. So just by doing this already, once we're dead, we're going to go back to this view. And that's much, much better than a blank screen or one that's not updating. But that's only half the equation. The other thing we want to do is we want to start the respawn process. So there's a few different ways. There's a lot of fancy things we could do with coroutines or whatever. I'm not going to bother with any of that just because we're going to try to keep things dead simple. There is not currently an update routine in my network manager, right? Okay, good-ish. What we're going to do in our network manager, we are going to do something like this. Float respawn timer. We're going to have it start at 0. Tell you what, we'll make it a public just to make it simple. And then what we're going to do, and we're going to hard code in a lot of things right now, but we're going to fix things up a little bit later. Then we're going to go and we're going to create some sort of update down here. Void update. So this will run every frame. We're going to take we're going to do if respawn timer is greater than 0. Okay? Normally it's 0, nothing is happening. But in our health, what we're going to do is grab our network manager. So we're going to go GameObject.find object of type network manager. And we're going to set the respawn timer to be equal to, let's say, 5 seconds. Okay? And that's it. So we're setting the standby camera to true, and we're setting the respawn timer to be not 0, basically. And we're decided that 5 seconds is the value we're going to hard code in for now. So if the respawn timer is above 0, first, let's go and reduce it by the timer. Okay? And now, if the respawn timer is less than or equal to 0 as a result of doing this, then time to respawn the player. Like so. And we'll reset, and that's it. So this will only run If the respawn timer is above 0, then we'll reduce the timer. And then if it got to 0 or less, then we respawn it. And then it's sitting there at 0 or less, which means this will not run on the next frame either. And do we just run spawn player at this point? Where do we disable the standby camera? Right there. Okay, yeah. So yeah, all we can do is just say, hey, spawn my player again. So now if we die after 5 seconds of looking at the map, we should respawn. Actually, let's drop to 3 seconds, especially for testing. It'll make it a little bit better. And you know what else I'll do? I'm going to add a button to kill myself on the screen, just for simplicity. So, tell you what, right in health over here, we're going to go void on GUI. If this health object is mine, and we are the player, you know, just in case I own something else, like maybe I can own a turret or something like that. It'll still be owned by me, but it actually won't be a player. So if this health component belongs to me and is my actual player, then we are going to put on screen, we're going to just do a quick GUI.button. We'll need a new rectangle, which is going to put me at something like screen.width minus 100. And so that's the X. So we're going to start on the right edge, but 100 pixels to the left side of the right edge. We're going to start at the top. The width is going to be 100, and the height is going to be, 40. And then it wants some sort of content. We'll call it suicide. Okay, so that's a button, and then we can wrap this in an if. If this button gets clicked, then die. Okay, so that way we can test in a single player setting. Makes it much easier. So we'll go and hit single player. There we are. Well, we actually spawned inside the room, which is good. And I'm going to go and click the suicide button. Blah! Whoops, it did not work. Did I misspell my standby camera? No. Can only find active objects? Object reference not sent to an instance. Why is that? I don't know, but here's what I'll do. Just for the sake of continuation, because I'm probably missing something blindingly obvious here. What I will do in the network manager, because the network manager has a copy of this standby camera kicking around. And it's a public, actually. Yeah, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're already planning on grabbing the network manager, so let's grab it here. Call it network manager. nm equals this. And then we can say nm.standbyCamera.setActive equals true. nm.respawnTimer equals 3 seconds long. All right, let's try that and see how it behaves. Hit single player. Click suicide. It kills us. It puts the standby camera, and 3 seconds later, we're back in the world. All right, so I can even do this with 2 characters now. So let me do a build. Just Control B if you want to do it very quickly. I'm going to hit play over here. Doopy doopy doop. Connect to the multiplayer. And then over here, I'll do the same thing. Connect to the multiplayer. Object reference not set. I'll have to go and check what that is. Now if I kill, actually I'll do it from this view. So if I kill by shooting 4 times. Whoops. Oh, I didn't realize I was clicking off the window here. My cursor. And he's dead. And there he goes. He respawned over there. And he's dead again. There. Ah, respawning, ladies and gentlemen. There he is. Good stuff. We're going to stop that, and we're going to stop this one. And we could probably get rid of the suicide button now, since we know this is working. We'll just comment this out, so if people want to play with that, they can. And object reference not set to an instance of an object. So in my network character, oh, it's running an on photon serialized view once before the anim component is actually grabbed. The start hasn't run yet when it's trying to do this for the very first time. Which is a very, very minor thing, but is kind of annoying at the same time. So let's do something like void init anim. Do something like this. We're going to grab this stuff here and do that. And it's just if anim is equal to null, then run it. Otherwise, it'll just, you know, return right away. Actually, I suppose I could have made the logic the other way around. Let's do that. If the animation is not equal to null, then just return instantly. There we go. So we'll try to run that in the start, but we'll also just to make sure that everything is okay, we'll run it here too. That's a tiny little bit of overhead because it's going to be running this 10 or 20 times a second, however often this does, but it's going to return right away. It's going to check. So the first time it'll check to see if it's null and then return right away. And there we have it. We don't even necessarily need it over here because apparently this will get run first. But that way, you know, it's kind of a belt and suspenders kind of thing. We know for sure that we've grabbed that. Actually, we might just rename this to something like, I don't know, cache components. Because anything else we might want to cache, just like the animator, we can do it in exactly the same way in the same place. So instead of doing a return here, just in case there are more of them later on, we'll do something like this. If we don't have the animator, then grab it. Cache more components here if required. There. So now if I do this again, I should not get that error. Good. Excellent. Okay. Good. Good. Actually, that might have not even happened on the first one. It might be when like someone else joins or whatever. But either way, it gets rid of a silly little annoying error. And we have respawning. Cool. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Always remember to like and of course subscribe, and make sure to comment if you like it, but also if you've got any questions. I will try to do my best to respond between this and the other channel. I can't always respond to everything, but I will do my best. And certainly all the other viewers are incredibly helpful all the time too, and I really appreciate the effort you guys go into keeping this community going. So anyway, hopefully next time we might do. I'm still thinking I really want to do a better sort of login screen and team selection. Now that we've got respawning, we've basically got a significant part of the game there. So implementing teams and factions might be the way to go, and a little bit of a scoreboard. Yeah, I think that might be next. Or bots or weapons. I don't know. We'll see what I feel like. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.